A truck is facing a rather serious problem. Upon inspecting the front wheel, it is immediately clear that one of the tires has suffered a massive puncture and tear. The entire tire is almost completely flat, can no longer support the load, and certainly cannot continue operating in this condition. Looking closely at the damaged tire, the tear is quite wide and deep. Based on the initial assessment, it is very likely that the truck accidentally scraped against or ran over an extremely sharp object on the road. A piece of metal, a sharp fragment, or some other hard object may have struck the sidewall with considerable force, tearing the rubber apart and causing the tire to lose all of its air pressure. For a very heavy truck, this situation is particularly dangerous. The tires do not simply help the vehicle move, they also have to support a huge portion of the vehicle's overall weight. When a tire suddenly fails while the truck is moving, especially one on the front axle, the driver can have a very difficult time maintaining control of the vehicle. If the failure happens while the truck is traveling at high speed, the situation can become much more dangerous. The vehicle could become unstable, steering could be affected, and the driver might not have enough time to react to the sudden emergency. Not only could the truck itself be involved in an accident, but other vehicles traveling nearby could also be put at risk. For large and heavy trucks in particular, even a relatively small problem with the wheel system can lead to serious consequences if it is not dealt with quickly. Fortunately, in this case, the incident did not cause any unfortunate accident. Perhaps the truck was traveling at a relatively low speed when the tire failed, giving the driver enough time to react, control the vehicle, and bring it safely to a stop. After a careful inspection, the mechanics determined that the tire was far too badly damaged to be used again. In this condition, simply patching or temporarily repairing it would certainly not be an appropriate solution. The safest option is to replace the damaged tire completely and inspect the inner tube, rim, and other related components to make sure the truck can return to the road safely. And this is where the beautiful female mechanic begins her work. At first glance, replacing a truck tire might seem like a routine repair job, but in reality, it is anything but simple. Truck tires are extremely large and heavy, and they are fitted tightly onto the rim. To remove the old tire, the mechanic needs specialized tools and enough leverage to separate the tire bead from the rim. The mechanic begins looking for the best way to deal with the damaged tire. However, as soon as she starts working, a major problem becomes apparent. It seems that her set of tools is missing some of the equipment she needs. So this makes removing the tire much more difficult. The tire bead is still firmly attached to the rim and does not want to come free. If the wrong tools are used, removing the tire could take much longer and might even damage the rim or create a safety risk for the person performing the repair. The mechanic has to keep changing her approach. Step by step, she tries to find the right point where she can insert her tool between the tire bead and the rim. This is a job that requires a great deal of patience, experience, and skill. Each time she applies force to the tire, she checks carefully to see whether it has started separating from the rim. But with a tire this large, strength alone is not enough. The mechanic needs to know how to use the available tools and apply force in the most effective way. In situations like this, the mechanic's experience becomes extremely important. Someone with limited experience could spend a great deal of time without being able to remove the tire. An experienced mechanic, on the other hand, knows exactly where to begin, where to apply pressure, and how to use the tools efficiently to make the job easier. But for the mechanic in this video, the challenge is far from over. The old tire is still firmly stuck to the rim, while some of the necessary tools are not available. That means she will have to come up with another solution if she wants to complete the job. Will she be able to remove this massive tire from the rim using only the tools she has available? And more importantly, how will she install the new tire and make sure the wheel is safe and ready to operate again? Let's continue watching the mechanic's work, because sometimes a job that seems as simple as changing a tire can turn into a real challenge, especially when the mechanic does not have all the specialized tools needed for the job. Replacing a truck tire would be relatively simple if you had the proper specialized tools to help remove it easily. But in this case, things are completely different. As I watched the mechanic begin working on the damaged tire, I couldn't help but wonder how she was going to remove it. Instead of using a professional tire changing machine like we normally see in repair shops, she seemed to have only a few very simple tools at her disposal: a hammer and two metal bars. That's it. To be honest, at first I couldn't imagine how she would possibly remove such a large tire from the rim using such basic equipment. Considering the size and weight of a truck tire, separating the tire from the rim is already a difficult job. Without specialized equipment, the challenge becomes even greater. At first, I even thought she might have to find some additional tools or ask someone else for help. But then she got to work. What impressed me most was that she didn't seem confused or discouraged by the situation. Instead of simply trying to use brute force, she carefully examined the point where the tire was connected to the rim. Then she chose a suitable position to insert one of the metal bars, and this may be the biggest difference between simply having a tool and actually knowing how to use it. The two metal bars in her hands looked extremely basic, but when positioned correctly, they became surprisingly effective tools for creating leverage. She began applying pressure little by little to the edge of the tire. After each attempt, she carefully checked whether the tire bead had started to separate from the rim. The process was slow, but it was clear that she was carefully controlling every step. The hammer was used to create the necessary force, while the metal bars helped work against the tire bead and gradually create a gap between the tire and the rim. At first, it seemed like the tire simply refused to move, but after patiently working on it for a while, the edge of the tire finally began to separate. This was the moment that really surprised me. I honestly didn't expect that she could remove such a large truck tire from the rim using nothing more than a hammer and two simple metal bars. Instead of relying entirely on modern equipment, she made the most of what she had available and found a practical solution for the situation. In my opinion, this is one of the most important skills a mechanic can have. In real-world repair work, you don't always have every tool you need. Unexpected problems can happen, and sometimes the working conditions simply don't allow you to use the specialized equipment you would normally find in a modern repair shop. When that happens, observation, experience, and problem-solving skills become extremely important. She wasn't trying to turn the job into a battle of strength against the tire. Instead, she found a way to use leverage to create the force she needed. By choosing the right position and applying pressure gradually, she was able to slowly separate the tire bead from the rim. This shows that sometimes a simple tool used correctly can be surprisingly effective. Of course, this type of work still requires caution. Truck tires are extremely heavy, and the rim itself can also weigh a considerable amount. If the tools are positioned incorrectly, they could slip or cause a sudden loss of control. That's why experience and concentration are absolutely essential. Watching the way she worked, I was particularly impressed by how calm and persistent she remained. She didn't rush, and she didn't give up when the tire refused to come off on the first attempt. Instead, she kept adjusting the position of the tools, changing the angle of force, and gradually finding the most effective way to get the job done. And eventually, all that persistence paid off. The tire finally began to separate from the rim. That moment genuinely surprised me. A job that would normally require specialized equipment was being handled with nothing more than a few basic tools. If you only looked at the hammer and two metal bars, you might think they would be completely useless against a huge truck tire like this. But watching her use them shows that the value of a tool doesn't depend only on the tool itself. It also depends greatly on the skill and experience of the person using it. Personally, I have to give her a lot of credit for the way she handled this job. Not only did she manage to complete the task with limited equipment, but she also demonstrated the ability to adapt and solve a problem under difficult circumstances. And that's one of the things that makes real-world mechanical work so interesting. Things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes, a mechanic has to come up with a solution based on whatever is available at that moment. And in this case, she proved that creativity, experience, and knowing how to use simple tools effectively can make a huge difference. But what do you think? How would you rate the way she removed this tire using nothing more than a hammer and 2 metal bars? Do you think this was a creative and effective solution, or do you still believe that using professional tire changing equipment would be the better option? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd really like to hear your opinion about this mechanic's skills and the way she handled the situation. There is something quite special about the work of the mechanic in this video that I think you should understand a little better. She is a mobile mechanic, which means the tools and equipment she can carry with her are naturally much more limited than those available in a permanent repair shop. When working in a professional garage, mechanics have many advantages. They can use complete tool sets, specialized tire changing machines, vehicle lifts, and many other types of equipment. When they need to inspect or repair a particular component, the vehicle can be raised to a suitable height, positioned wherever it is most convenient, and the mechanic can access the area that needs attention much more easily. But the work of a mobile mechanic is completely different. She has to carry the necessary tools in her vehicle and travel to wherever the customer has encountered a problem. This means she cannot bring along all of the modern equipment that a large repair shop would normally have. And because of that, we can see that almost every repair process in this video is carried out manually. From inspecting the damaged tire and finding a way to remove it from the rim to the following stages of the repair, she has to rely heavily on her own strength, experience, and ability to handle unexpected situations. This certainly makes the job much more difficult. But if we look at it from another perspective, these difficulties also allow us to see her true abilities more clearly. She doesn't have a fully equipped modern garage behind her. She also doesn't have specialized machines that can make every task faster and easier. Instead, she has to work with whatever she has available and find her own solution to each problem. And what is truly impressive is that she doesn't seem to let the lack of equipment interfere with her work. That is something I genuinely admire. Because repairing a vehicle inside a garage and repairing one right on the side of the road are two completely different situations. Inside a garage, a mechanic has a stable working environment. There is shelter, proper lighting, a full range of tools, and equipment to support the work. If they need a particular tool, they can simply take it from the storage area or their workstation. But when repairing a vehicle on the road, everything becomes much more difficult. The mechanic has to work in a limited space. The road surface may not be level. Weather conditions can change. Other vehicles are still moving around, and the mechanic must constantly pay attention to the surroundings to stay safe. On top of that, there is no guarantee that all the necessary tools will be available to perform the job in the most convenient way. So a problem that may not seem particularly serious for the vehicle can sometimes become a significant challenge for the mechanic. Especially when working under these conditions, not every mechanic would be able to maintain the same level of patience and enthusiasm from beginning to end. Some jobs require a great deal of physical effort. Some steps have to be repeated several times before the desired result is achieved. And sometimes simply not having the right tool can make the repair take much longer than expected. Yet she continues to stay committed to her work. She doesn't complain about the lack of equipment. She doesn't easily give up when she encounters difficulties. Instead, she adapts to the situation and continues completing each step one at a time. Perhaps it is her passion for vehicles that gives her this kind of work ethic. Because if repairing vehicles were simply a job to her, it would probably be difficult to maintain this much patience and dedication while working under such challenging conditions. But for her, it seems that every vehicle with a problem is simply another problem that needs to be solved. It doesn't matter whether the job is easy or difficult. It doesn't matter whether she has all the necessary tools or not. What matters is getting the vehicle repaired and making sure it can safely return to the road. That is what impresses me the most. I have a great deal of respect for this mechanic's work ethic. Not because she has the most advanced equipment, and not because she has a large garage filled with machines, but because, despite having limited resources, she continues to do her best and complete the job using her own skills, experience, and determination. Sometimes we tend to judge a mechanic by the equipment they have, but watching her work makes me think that what matters even more is how a mechanic uses whatever is available to them. Someone may have a huge collection of tools, but if they don't know how to use them properly, that doesn't necessarily mean they will work efficiently. Meanwhile, someone with only a few basic tools can still accomplish remarkable things if they know how to make the most of them, have experience, and are willing to find solutions to problems. And this mechanic has shown us exactly that. Thank you for always giving your best and dedicating yourself to your work. Thank you for showing us that professionalism is not only about having modern equipment, but also about responsibility, perseverance, and passion for what you do. And thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your valuable day to watch this entire video. If you were also impressed by the way this mechanic works, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your support is a huge motivation for us to continue bringing you interesting videos about mechanics, vehicles, and challenging repair jobs. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I wish all of you happiness, good health, and many wonderful moments. See you again in the next video.